and welcome to the Riyal Deal. Coming to you from the Al-Arabiya English studios, this is your weekly bulletin bringing you all the latest business news headlines and analysis from Saudi Arabia. Coming up, as Saudi Arabia's foreign reserves rise to a 6-year high, we take a look at what the latest figures tell us. We'll be speaking to the CEO of the Irish hospitality management group Kerten Hospitality and asking how the company's goals align with Vision 2030. Well, another tourism-related story we're following for you. We'll be speaking to the CEO of the Prince Mohammed bin Salman Royal Reserve about his ambitious rewilding and restoration program. Plus, we'll take you to the streets of Jeddah's historic district of Al-Balad, where shops, markets and eateries are all seeing an uptick in activity throughout the holy month of Ramadan. Diving straight into our top story, some of the latest economic indicators and numbers out of the kingdom. Well, according to fresh central bank data, Saudi Arabia's foreign reserves rose by about $15.6 billion during the month of January. That's up 3% on December and stands at a 6-year high. Well, these figures are significant because reserve assets are a closely watched indicator of economic stability, as well as external financial strength. And foreign reserves determine a country's ability to navigate global economic volatility. Well, on an annualized basis, the Saudi central bank's net foreign assets rose by 10%. Meanwhile, the kingdom's capital spending rose 18% year on year in Q4, widening the budget deficit to just under 95 billion Saudi riyals. Well, while oil revenues were down sharply in Q4 and throughout the course of the year, non-oil revenues, which are a key pillar of Saudi Arabia's diversification strategy, rose in 2025 to just over 500 billion Saudi riyals. Now, we've been talking about various tourism and hospitality-related stories in recent episodes of the Riyal Deal. Today, we're going to turn our attention to the Prince Mohammed bin Salman Royal Reserve. That is a massive biodiversity-rich conservation area in northwestern Saudi Arabia. Well, in line with Vision 2030 goals, this area is being transformed into a global tourism destination. Well, earlier on this month, I spoke to the CEO of the reserve. Well, Andrew Zaloumis is the CEO of the Prince Mohammed bin Salman Royal Reserve and joins us now. Thank you very much indeed for speaking to us. You're overseeing an extremely ambitious rewilding and restoration program. I'd like to start by asking you about that, what it involves and how it's going.
You know, I think interestingly is a little bit about my background. I started off in Africa, I have about 35, 40 years experience, started off before the word rewilding was known. And one of my key projects was the largest estuarine lake in Africa, Lake St. Lucia, which we not only restored with the World Bank support, we also rewilded all the original species. So having that background, when this project was getting going and I was invited to come to Saudi Arabia, it was a little bit like a soccer player. I didn't really want to leave the soccer team that I was in because you know the guys, you know what you're doing and you're committed. When I actually came and saw what was here, I was just gobsmacked. I was really taken aback. Firstly, it was about the scale. It was the fact that you have 15 ecosystems in one reserve potentially, and that's very unique in the Middle East. And I think importantly, the actual splendor of the area just hooked me. But when you landed on the ground and you actually got around, you actually saw that the ecology wasn't in the state it had been 100 and 120 years ago, and there was actually a need to seriously look in rewilding. And the rewilding for me was ability to do rewilding at scale. PMBSR reserves country size, and we're looking at all 15 ecosystems, landscape-wide, restoration rewilding. And I think importantly in rewilding, one always thinks of the species, the megafauna you bring back and the numbers, but rewilding is much more than that. It's actually about getting an ecosystem to function, and an ecosystem to function in a healthy manner, as it did before heavy intervention by man. And that's what this is around. So every time we reintroduce a new species, it's a landmark. But for me, the landmark is when you're actually rebuilding what they call trophic levels, the energy levels, rebuilding all the bits of the spider's web, because that will eventually get us to the end.
Okay, and one of the species that I'm told could be making a comeback there is lions. Tell us a bit about how that's going.
You know, lions are always controversial, makes people worried, and we're still some way off to lions. But from the board point of view, we have approval to bring back 23 species. It includes your major predators. It includes cheetah. It includes leopard. It includes lion, and one has to get there. So the first fact with rewilding, especially in this ecosystem, the challenges is many of the species we're dealing with are either extinct. 2 of them have gone globally extinct, and there are another 4 or 5 who are locally extinct. So when you look at Pantheria leo, which is the lion, the specific Asiatic lion that occurred historically, the last one being shot around 120 years ago, there are only about 300 left globally. So your first thing is to source the right founder population. Then you need to rebuild the economy. And when I mean the economy, I'm talking about both the rewilding side, the ecosystem, as well as communities, community buy-in. And then one's looking at the option of wild lion, among other species.
Now, Andrew, tourists are obviously going to be a key part of your revenue there at the reserve. They're also central to Vision 2030, but too many tourists in a nature reserve could end up being slightly problematic. How are you going to get the balance right?
Well, we have a management plan. It's like a master plan, and importantly in that you have building blocks, and what it does is it sets limits. So when we talk about conservation, we talk about community development and benefits, we talk about tourism, we talk about a balance. But a balance doesn't necessarily mean equal. And the bottom line is always, what is the reserve being conserved for? In the case of PMBSR, we're conserving it obviously for its ecosystems diversity, its number of species, and also its absolute splendor. And within that, you look at things like zonation, setting of limits, and then you also have to always remember it's the goose that lays the golden egg. If you overdevelop your tourism, you lose your asset. And when you look at a reserve like PMBSR, and I think this is a big one for the economy of a country, many people travel globally because they want to see something. So you'll come to Saudi Arabia because of Al-Ula, it's a World Heritage Site. So this reserve specifically, we currently have 4 tentative UNESCO sites. They're on the country list. If those, or when those are approved by UNESCO, and it'll take time, it makes it a reserve globally unique. It makes it the most splendid desert reserve in the Middle East, and people will travel just to come and see that. People travel, they come and see that attraction, and then they spend more days in the country. So they'll come into Al-Ula, they'll come into a PMBSR, they'll go across to a NEO, and you're creating a destination. So the conservation part of it is really about establishing a destination, which is original, it's pristine, and it's alluring for the public, both Saudis and internationals.
Now, we're talking here about a vast area of northwestern Saudi Arabia, which is the Prince Mohammed bin Salman Royal Reserve. What sort of visitor numbers are you getting, and what are you expecting? Where do you see things heading from here?
Currently, at the moment, to introduce that topic, we focus very strongly on actually creating the destination, and that is about nature. It's not about the gates. It's not about the tourism facilities in the initial phase. It's about a place people want to visit, because when they stand at the boundary of the reserve, they know they're in a reserve, they don't need a sign. So at the moment, we have a very strong local visitorship, Saudi-based local visitorship. Increasingly, numbers are coming in from Al-Ula, and let's call them Project Neras. At the end of this year and early 2027, a Marloes will open, which is an anchor tenant in the reserve, and it's opening many hotels. And to go to the crux of your question, which is about visitor numbers, remembering we country size, our visitor numbers are capped at about 2 million visits a year.
Okay, and obviously
it puts us in the leagues of a Kruger National Park, for example, which is the most famous African reserve, a Masamari in Kenya, or Yellowstone National Park. In fact, probably lower numbers if you take it per hectare, square kilometer per person.
Okay, clearly lots for people to see. We've been looking at some of the pictures of the reserve as you've been talking, flora and fauna of all kinds. What sort of an experience can a visitor to the reserve expect?
Well, you start off with the coast, and you start with the old towns. One of our tentative listings for UNESCO is Old Town in Al-Waj and in Duba, which is much like the old town, obviously smaller, in Jeddah. And then from that cultural experience with the horses, the camels, you can hit the heart conservation, which is really what we call reef to ridge. So it's at the top of the Hajj Mountains all the way out to the coral reefs in the Red Sea. And when you bring it down to specifics, the little things, you've got Wadi Al Disa, which is the greenest wadi, and it's permanent wet wadi in Saudi Arabia. It's got thousands of years old of human habitation and history. It's even got similar sites to Al-Ula on a much lesser scale. It's got etchings. You've got things like juniper trees, which are hundreds of years old. You've got the largest ibex population in the Middle East. So there's a whole spectrum, but what really brings it together from a tourism point of view, you can do it almost all in one day. So you have these 15 ecosystems, these species we've discovered since we started our research, which this is our fourth winter. We've discovered over 8 species new to science, new globally at a time where 23 species are expected to go extinct in our lifetimes by IUCN. And this wonder world, this nature is accessible. You've got 3 airports within the region currently that can get you in and get you out. And we would encourage not just international visitors, but also local visitors, because this is Saudi heritage. This is what the nation is proud of.
And just tell us, Andrew, what sort of economic opportunities do you see the reserve representing for the kingdom?
Well, you can take the longer term economic opportunities that you perfecting and establishing how to rewild and reestablish ecosystems. And a healthy ecosystem is the base of every economy. And conservationists like to waffle about that sort of mother hubbard stuff. So let me get much more to the point. If you take this current phase of the project, we've established over 350 permanent jobs for locals, rangers. So 83% of our staff are from local communities. 96% of our staff are Saudis, but it's going somewhere. The kingdom signed something called Vision 3030, which is very similar to Vision 2030 in that Vision 2030 also includes 30% of Saudi Arabia being in conservation by 2030. When I came into the kingdom and we started, we were sitting at about 9%. We're now sitting at over 20% of the kingdom. So what we're doing is actually developing a new industry. It's a new industry to Saudi Arabia. It's a hard conservation part of the industry. And then there's also the tourism part of the industry. And as it evolves, so the job opportunities increase. And we look at the whole value chain for those job opportunities. And we look first locally. So communities are the center of the initiative. And so in this first phase, you've had hard jobs and conservation. As the tourism comes on stream, the value chain increases. And we've already, for example, started training local guides and all the other parts of the value chain that will really enrich the local economy.
Okay, just listening to what you're saying there, and just to wrap up, I mean, it sounds like there's some really strong linkages between what you're doing and Vision 2030.
Absolutely. So, when you look at Vision 2030 and you look at the 3 pillars at a high level, the one is a vibrant society, the other one's a thriving economy, the other one's an ambitious nation. And conservation and restoration touches all in those. If I make 4 points, building the land to 30% by 2030, the point that a healthy environment means you are resilient to global warming, some hard stats around that. The region we're in expects a 2 to 3% increase in heat by 2050 and a 5 to 10% decrease in precipitation, in other words, water in the soil. And by restoring the economy to what it was, the ecology, you're making it resilient, and you're building the ability for the environment to withstand and protect against global warming, which underpins the economy. The third area, as I said earlier, is a new industry. And then the fourth area, and this is where His Royal Highness's name comes into it. We're part of the Royal Reserve Council. They've created the space for us to achieve and do what we're doing with other reserves. But with His Royal Highness's name, we brought in a number of firsts. One is 36% of our rangers are females. They're females from the reserve. And a knock-on effect has been, for example, Jordan now has its first female rangers. And I'm sure it's because PMBSR has shown that it's possible. And as the industry grows in KSA, that fits Vision 2030, where 30% of the workforce will be female. And then, of course, we brought back animals like onaga. People think onaga are a donkey, a stupid animal. But when you read carefully and you read the Quran very carefully, you'll see that there's a differentiation. And it's a Persian onaga. It's a very wild animal. It's older than the horse. And we've brought them back. There's 600 left globally of Asiatic, of Persian onaga. And we've brought them back and are giving them a place in the ecosystem to rebuild the ecosystem.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Andrew Zaloumis, the CEO of the Prince Mohammed bin Salman Royal Reserve. Thank you very much indeed. Let's take a quick look at some of the other stories making the rounds. Saudi Arabia's new national carrier Riyadh Air has announced that Cairo has been added to its growing network. The airline will offer daily services between Riyadh and the Egyptian capital with a Boeing 7879 Dreamliner. Well, Riyadh Air, which is going to take delivery of its first planes in the coming weeks, is launching with flights to London, Dubai and now Cairo before reaching more than 100 destinations by 2030. In a sign of how Saudi Arabia is now a global holiday destination, the travel agency Thomas Cook has just unveiled package holidays to the kingdom. Well, this new offering gives British travellers a new long-haul destination to explore. Well, Thomas Cook, which has a history stretching back to the 19th century, said in a statement that Saudi Arabia offers experiences that can't be replicated elsewhere. And the province of Al-Jouf, which lies about 950 kilometres to the north of Riyadh, has a brand new airport. Al-Jouf International officially began operating last Thursday, finalising the complete transfer from the old airport. Well, the new facility has an estimated annual capacity of 1.6 million passengers, compared to 175,000 at the previous airport. And the city of Qiddiya mega project under construction is set to be a massive entertainment, sports and cultural destination just close to Riyadh. But the city is about to become even closer to the capital thanks to the new Qiddiya bullet train. Well, with speeds of up to 250 kilometers per hour, that train will transport passengers from Qiddiya to Riyadh in just 30 minutes. Now, tourism is central to Vision 2030, and the sector, which has seen staggering transformation on several levels, is an important contributor to the national economy. Well, the kingdom has surpassed its original Vision 2030 tourism goal 7 years ahead of schedule and has raised the bar with an even bigger target of 150 million tourists by the year 2030. Well, one of the companies with a growing presence in Saudi Arabia and which has been playing part in making the country a premium global destination is the Irish hospitality management group Kerten Hospitality. Well, Kerten, which manages hotels, service departments and collaborative co-working hubs, has a long-standing track record in the kingdom. And in many ways, Kerten's approach seems to mirror many of the goals of Vision 2030. Well, I'm joined here in the studio by Marloes Knippenberg, who is the CEO of Kerten Hospitality. Marloes, thank you very much indeed for coming to see us.
Thank you.
As I said in the introduction, you're an established player in the Saudi market. But for people who don't know Kerten, can you just tell us a bit about your company and the brands under your umbrella?
Yeah. Kerten Hospitality, we're a mixed-use lifestyle operating company. A little bit different than many other operating companies. We go by brand guidelines versus brand standards, which means that the brands that we have, so the house is our upper upscale premium product. It goes very much in line with architecture, design. You have Cloud 7, mid-market, up-and-coming destinations where there's footfall, not necessarily tourism footfall, could be any tourism, it could be any footfall. We use both brands for hotels, service departments, and branded residences. And we just launched our first contemporary affordable brand, Hosmi. So in that budget segment where you see today a lot of screaming colors or kind of very boring product, we see a really great opportunity. Because we go by guidelines and not by brand standards, it allows us to look at location, target audience, and tailor the product towards those, including taking the vision of the owner, if that's government or private sector, which really allows us to go bespoke, but bespoke at scale. Today, we're a company with over 4,500 keys. We're 60 agreements signed with 10 projects open. We're opening another 6 in the next 6 months. And we're scaling significantly. The team is spread over 5 destinations and locations. We have people on the ground in every destination we operate, which really allows us to go fast, respond fast, and also be very adaptable to change product depending on where market trends are going.
Right, it means you know the terrain you're operating in.
Yeah, correct.
I was going to ask you who a typical Kerten consumer is, but I'm assuming it varies very much according to those different tiers of your product offering.
Yeah, which is the beauty. And you really see how we have quite a strong following. So we have a lot of direct business since the onset because people have seen our project, either in the media or communications, or are looking for something that is a little different, that is very community-centric and not as a marketing gig or something that is, over the top of storytelling, but something that's simply inclusive of the environment, inclusive of whatever is going on, and has more depth than just a bed to sleep in. And for that, you can see when we developed Cloud 7, it was developed at the time for millennials. We didn't have any millennials stay with us. It was a much more mature audience. When you look at some of our projects, we'd envisioned, again, a more mature leisure audience. We have young corporates staying, and there you can really see in this lifestyle segment, it's very much attracting people for very different reasons.
Okay, and you've got some pretty ambitious expansion plans, haven't you? Not just in Saudi Arabia, but right across the Middle East, North Africa region. Just tell us a bit about what you've got in store.
So we're aiming 10,000 keys open by 2030. We're halfway there. Our January, we signed 1,000 keys just between Morocco and Saudi Arabia. And for many people who know us, have over the years referred to us still as a small kind of startup company. I think today we're a mid-size operating company that can really allow for that scale. We see a lot of opportunity in Morocco. We still see a lot of opportunity in Saudi Arabia. The UAE is picking up significantly, but even when you look at all of a sudden, there is more movement in Oman. Egypt, it has had its downturns. It has, had the challenges with regards to currency, etc. But when you look at the momentum in those markets, it's quite significant. And the beauty for us as a company is that a lot of the bigger, well-known operating companies with brand standards and the same kind of brands have been in those markets for quite a while. Well, the new audience, and I'm not just talking about the younger audience, but the kind of new audience of traveling is looking for bespoke product. And the way we built up Kerten Hospitality is to be able to scale bespoke. So we're just at a very small stage of where we can take the company, simply because the infrastructure that we've built is so strong.
Right, and you've got a long-standing track record in Saudi Arabia. What sort of opportunities are you seeing in the kingdom?
So we were really early entering Saudi Arabia, again, as a lifestyle alternative operating company. And because of the way that we look at the markets and the way that we like to understand the markets, when we went in, Vision 2030 was just announced. It was just at that kind of borderline of people challenging, is this really going to happen, yes or no? And even when we were looking at project plans, it was, do we go with the old style? Do we go with the new style? And that changed so fast for us. So we've had the benefit of being there early. We've had the benefit of building some really strong relations. Plus, we've always built relations on two sides, private sector as well as government. And we've never banked on, we'll get some keys for free. We come in and just, find the red carpet, etc. The locations that we've been looking at have all been locations where there is reasons for people to go already now. And that doesn't have to be just Jeddah and Riyadh. But for example, if you look at Abha has a massive amount of tourism coming in for the summer. But if you go there, if you look at the infrastructure, if you look at the F&B offering today, if you look at the seasonality, it's probably the only place where it's green all year long. Those kind of locations, Yambu, we're opening just later this year. For many people that know Yambu, they say, but it's industrial. Well, if you come there, it's not that industrial. If we're waterfront, but it's waterfront. Ministry of Culture is working on a number of buildings and the renovation of the old town, like our project that we have in Alula, where after we launched Cloud 7, Alula, which is 300 units, we started with Darton Torre, the house hotel, which is 30 keys, city center, restoration of kind of the past. But I think what's the beauty of when you look at the vision, but also when you look at the different projects, and the Minister of Culture said it to us when we launched the project, which was, don't replicate the past. It has to be an honor to the past, but with a forward vision, a modern interpretation, without losing the culture, the identity, the heritage, and the place it is. And I think for us, that's the beauty of the opportunities. We've built some really strong relations with a couple of local families. They're going into hospitality, or they are in hospitality, all for different reasons. And many people are saying, Al-Asa is, foundation of our family. That's where, it started. We want to leave something behind, but not something that is just glamorous and etc., but something that really brings the community together, creates jobs, creates opportunity for suppliers. And again, because of our alternative approach, because of the lifestyle elements that we have in, plus because we go local, we can work with local suppliers and local community. And I think those components together really create all of a sudden an amazing opportunity for us in a country like Saudi Arabia, because of the variety of destinations, the variety of families, and the alignment with the government sector at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of the particularities of the Saudi market for the hospitality sector, I mean, what sets it apart? I mean, do you think it's fair to say that it's a market that is perhaps at the higher end of the pricing scale? Is that a fair comment?
So I think when you look at anything, and I think this is also where, if Saudi Arabia would have gone in very gentle and very quiet, etc., would the international perception have changed of the country? Would it have really become an interesting country on the map for tourism, for locations for, cultural, but also, if it's skiing or nature or sea, etc.? Probably not. And when you do that and you attract a high-end audience, naturally, you kind of need to have an inventory of those kind of properties. If you look at our strategy, we've not played in that segment just because we believe over the longer term, there will be a lot of opportunity in that mid-segment. Once there is, all of the numbers that you just set out for 2030, right? There will be a lot of different people coming in a lot of different segments. And that's where we're really playing strong, because all of a sudden people will start traveling the countries, start exploring different locations, and there people will start looking for different types of products.
Okay. Just to wrap up, as I said in the introduction, a lot of Kerten's goals seem to mirror some of the goals of Vision 2030. Is that a fair comment?
Yes. And I think that's also why we really found in Saudi kind of a ground for business. We set our plans and our goals and our vision 12 years ago, I guess. We haven't adapted them. And when they came out with Vision 2030, and you see the alignment, when you look at the talk about lifestyle, culture, integration of community, building ecosystems, building growth for the local population, creating product for not just international travels, but for Saudis in Saudi, which is such a different kind of perspective. But it really goes along with our look at, local hiring, supply chain, and everything else. So there's a great alignment, and I think that's also why we build good relations, and we resonate with people like PIF, with people like government sectors, with governors in different establishments, because we understand what they're saying, and because we go by guidelines, we can actually take those different visions in the different destinations and tailor that very easily to product.
All right, so plenty of synergy by the sounds of
Yes,
things.
absolutely.
All right, well, thank you very much for coming to see us. Really appreciate it. Marloes Knippenberg, CEO of Kerten Hospitality. Thank you
Thank you very much.
Let's get a quick look at some of the other stories from the week. The electric vehicle manufacturer Lucid Group has announced that 2025 saw a surge in deliveries, which were up 55% year on year. Lucid, which is majority owned by Saudi Arabia's public investment fund, delivered 15,841 units during the year with a particularly strong Q4. Well, deliveries were up 72% in Q4 versus the same period of 2024. Well, the EV maker has indicated confidence for the year ahead. Apparel Group is accelerating its Saudi expansion, adding 25 new brands and planning to open more than 200 stores this year, taking the retailer's footprint in the kingdom to nearly 1,000 outlets. Well, Apparel Group manages 85 global brands, amongst them Tommy Hilfiger, Skechers, Crocs and Calvin Klein. The group also operates food and lifestyle brands such as Tim Hortons and Jamie's Italian. And the Saudi electricity company has launched a new corporate identity. The company has rebranded itself as Saudi Energy, which it says marks a new chapter in its journey and reflecting its role within the kingdom's national energy ecosystem. Well, in line with the objectives of Vision 2030, Saudi Energy seeks to enhance energy supply security and grid reliability. And finally, traditional markets and stalls across the kingdom are seeing an uptick in activity throughout the holy month of Ramadan. Well, in Jeddah, the Ramadan Nights shopping exhibition is in full swing, bringing together multiple brands and exhibitors from the retail and wholesale sectors. Well, the city, with its narrow streets and UNESCO-listed district of Al-Balad, is drawing large crowds as people gather in that historic part of the city for their iftar meals. Well, shop owners there are delighted, saying the turnout has never been so strong.
The turnout, I see, has increased, and it is higher than before, especially among the locals who come to the town to break their fast, sit around, have iftar and suhoor. The atmosphere is absolutely wonderful. These old houses, the state has given immense attention to the historical area, preserving it, which is truly wonderful. And that is what attracted us. It motivates people to preserve it. Our house is still standing, and there's an effort underway to have it taken over by the historical area. The house is beautiful, and it is one of the famous landmarks, so it must be preserved. Those who have no past have no present. This is history.
Okay, well, that's all we have time for this edition of the Riyal Deal here on Arabiya English. Ramadan Kareem to our viewers if you're fasting, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.